storm on the road, or the beginning of a reckoning. When two white officers pulled over a black man speeding through the rain, they thought he was just another reckless driver. What they didn't know, he wasn't running from the law, he was racing against death. Dr. Malcolm Rivers was the only man who could save the mayor's dying grandson. And in the next hour, this small act of arrogance would rip open a city's deepest corruption. This isn't just about profiling. It's about power, silence, and what happens when one man refuses both. Drop a comment. Tell us where you're watching. This story will shake you. The rain came down like a curtain, washing the streets of Savannah in silver streaks that blurred headlights and swallowed sirens. Midnight cloaked the city in hush and shadow, but inside Dr. Malcolm Rivers' old pickup, the silence was anything but peaceful. His phone still buzzed with adrenaline-laced urgency. Jason Drake, 8 years old, allergic reaction, collapsing lungs. And no one at the gala knew how to save him. Except Malcolm. He was already halfway across town when the call came. His tires sliced through flooded intersections, his mind racing faster than the truck. Jason wasn't just a patient. He was the mayor's grandson. But more than that, he was a child. A life on the edge, dangling by a thread. And Malcolm was the only one who knew how to catch it before it snapped. He weaved through the cobblestone alleys and slick boulevards, the city's historic charm, now just a maze of delays. Rain hammered the roof. Lightning clawed at the clouds. His eyes flicked between the road and the dashboard clock. Every minute another breath Jason might not take. Come on, he muttered, white-knuckling the steering wheel. He could already see the scene in his head. The child's chest rising in shallow gasps. The frantic ER team doing what they could but waiting, desperate, for the surgeon who could cut through the chaos. There wouldn't be time for pleasantries or checklists. It would be tube, oxygen, for epinephrine, muscle memory forged in war zones and trauma bays. He'd done it all before, but never under this kind of pressure. The streets were nearly empty, just the occasional red light blinking stubbornly in the storm. He didn't hesitate. At the next intersection, he blew through the red light, tires squealing as horns erupted behind him. He didn't care. Couldn't care. Jason had maybe 10 minutes left. Then, like a gunshot in the night, blue and red lights exploded in his rearview mirror. A siren wailed, sharp and final. No. Malcolm's heart sank. He eased off the gas and pulled over. Because he knew what this could become. A black man, late at night, speeding through downtown Savannah. It didn't matter if he wore scrubs. It didn't matter if he was saving a life. All that mattered was the color of his skin, and the badge walking toward his truck. The rain spilled into the cabin as he rolled the window down. Both hands on the wheel, visible. Always visible. The officer approached, older, white, with a scowl etched deep into his face. License and registration. Officer, please, Malcolm said, calm but urgent. I'm a surgeon. There's a child, he's dying. I need to get to Memorial Hospital. The officer didn't blink. Didn't ask questions. Just repeated, license and registration. And in that moment, Malcolm knew. This wasn't about the law. It never was. It was about power. And a dying child had just been pushed to the back seat of a storm. The storm raged outside, but the storm inside the truck cab was worse. Malcolm's hands shook as he reached, slowly, carefully, toward the glove box. He moved like a man defusing a bomb, because that's what this was. One wrong twitch, one misunderstood glance, and he could be sprawled across the pavement, his blood mixing with the rain. He handed over the documents. The officer, whose badge read Clint Rawlings, snatched them without a word and stomped back to his cruiser. Malcolm sat still, dripping, his heart thudding against his ribs like it was trying to escape. Every second dragged like an anchor. Jason. Every minute that ticked away was oxygen he wasn't getting. Brain cells dying. A mother praying over her son. A mayor on her knees. A child fading. And he was stuck here, being judged not by his credentials, not by his intentions, but by skin and stereotype. Another cop appeared. Younger, lankier. Face tight with nerves. Brent McCoy, the name tag said. He stood in the shadows of the headlights, speaking in hushed tones with Rawlings. They both glanced toward Malcolm's truck, eyes narrow, suspicious. You'd think Malcolm was a suspect in a crime, not a surgeon with a dying patient waiting. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat again. He didn't dare reach for it. Instead, he shouted through the open window. That's the hospital. They're calling again. Jason Drake's going into shock. Call dispatch. Call the ER. Please. Rawlings didn't even turn around. Malcolm dropped his head against the wheel. His jaw clenched so tight it ached. He wasn't just furious, he was helpless. And that was worse. Then came the knock on the window. Rawlings stood there, rain slicking off his uniform like armor. "Step out of the vehicle," he barked. Malcolm hesitated. "Why? You ran a red light. Could be impaired." "Step out." "I'm not impaired. I'm on an emergency run. Check with the hospital. I'm begging you." But Rawlings just sneered. "Everyone's got a story, hero. Out." With slow, mechanical movements, Malcolm opened the door and stepped out. The rain hit him like a slap, soaking through his scrubs instantly. Cold and degrading. McCoy hovered behind Rawlings, visibly unsure. "Maybe we should." "Zip it," Rawlings snapped. And then, without warning, the cuffs clicked around Malcolm's wrists. Not just tight. Vindictive. Deliberate. Rawlings yanked them until metal bit into flesh. "You have no idea what you're doing," Malcolm said through clenched teeth. "No," Rawlings said, shoving him toward the squad car. "You don't." Jason's image flashed in Malcolm's mind. Gasping for breath, nurses panicking. Every second they stood here was a second stolen from that child's life. Inside the cruiser, the cold vinyl seat pressed against his back like punishment. Through the rain-blurred glass, Malcolm watched the lights of the hospital in the distance. So close. So far. He wasn't just detained. He was being erased. And Jason was dying because of it. The squad car jerked forward, tires hissing against the flooded pavement as Officer McCoy took the wheel. Rawlings sat in the passenger seat, smug, thumbing through Malcolm's ID like it was a menu. No one spoke. The only sound was the steady swish of windshield wipers and the occasional crack of thunder splitting the sky. Malcolm sat rigid in the back, his hands cuffed tightly behind him. The sharp metal bit deeper with every pothole. But it wasn't the pain that seared, it was the time. Every passing second felt like a betrayal. Jason could be taking his last breath right now. And the only person who could save him was being paraded through the rain like a criminal. "I'm begging you," Malcolm said again, his voice low but urgent. "Radio dispatch. Call Memorial. You'll see. I'm not making this up." Rawlings scoffed without turning around. "You think I haven't heard this act before? I'm a doctor. I'm late. Somebody's dying. You people always got a crisis." Malcolm's jaw tightened. "You people." There it was. Thinly veiled, but clear as day. In the front seat, McCoy glanced at Malcolm through the rearview mirror. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Doubt flickered in his eyes. But it wasn't enough. "Not yet." "You're wasting time," Malcolm said again. "Check the back of my truck. You'll see the gear. Intubation kit. AP pens. Oxygen tanks. You'll see my trauma clearance badge. Everything's there." Still no response. "You're killing a child," he added, his voice barely a whisper now. "You're just too proud to admit it." That broke something. Rawlings slammed his fist against the dashboard, making McCoy flinch. "Shut up," he barked. "You don't tell me how to do my job. You don't tell me anything." The cruiser swerved slightly before McCoy corrected it. His breath hitched. "Clint," he said quietly, "maybe we should just verify." Rawlings twisted in his seat, eyes burning. "You questioning me now, rookie?" Malcolm leaned forward, locking eyes with McCoy in the mirror. "You have the radio. Just call. 5 seconds. That's all it takes to know I'm telling the truth." McCoy hesitated. His fingers twitched toward the mic. Then the radio crackled. "All units. Urgent request. Medical emergency involving Dr. Malcolm Rivers. Immediate release authorized by order of Mayor Evelyn Drake. Patient status, critical. Estimated time to death, under 4 minutes. Repeat, under 4 minutes." The car went still. Rawlings paled. His bravado cracked like old plaster. "No," he muttered. "No way." McCoy's hands trembled. He fumbled for the keys. 3 tries. Then, click, the cuffs sprang open. Malcolm surged forward, massaging his wrists, his voice sharp as glass. "Get me back to my truck," he said. I'll drive," McCoy stammered. "No," Malcolm snapped. "You're too slow." He threw open the door and sprinted through the downpour, his scrubs soaked, his shoes slapping puddles. Behind him, McCoy hesitated, then followed. Rawlings didn't move. He just sat there, staring at the dash like it had betrayed him. But the damage was already done. And so was Malcolm's patience. Malcolm's tires screamed against the slick pavement as he shot through the city like a man possessed. McCoy sat silently in the passenger seat, rainwater dripping from his collar, shame soaking deeper than the storm. Neither spoke. There was no time for apologies now. Red lights blurred past them, horns blared into the night, but Malcolm didn't flinch. His fingers gripped the wheel like a vice. Every turn he made shaved off seconds, and every second meant the difference between breath and stillness. "You should have let me go," he muttered, eyes locked on the windshield. McCoy swallowed hard, his voice barely audible over the sirens. "I know." The hospital loomed ahead, its pale lights cutting through the rain like a lighthouse through fog. Malcolm didn't wait for the car to stop. The moment the ER entrance came into view, he slammed the truck into park, leapt out, and sprinted through the automatic doors, soaked to the bone. Inside, chaos had bloomed. A nurse saw him, relief washing over her face like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "Dr. Rivers," she called. "They're losing him." Jason Drake lay small and pale on the trauma bed, his chest rising in gasping, jerky motions. Machines beeped erratically, nurses scrambled, and a resident hovered by the crash cart frozen. "Get out of my way," Malcolm barked, shoving his wet coat to the floor and pulling on gloves as he moved. He took command like a conductor stepping onto a stage. Every movement precise. Every instruction sharp. "Epinephrine. 1 milligram. Intubation tray. Bag him now." A nurse handed over the tools, her hands shaking. Malcolm didn't hesitate. He worked from muscle memory, blocking out the alarms, the panic, the flashing lights. There was only Jason. Only the fragile beat of a young boy's heart trying to hold on. He injected the AP, then tilted Jason's head back, guiding the intubation tube in. Sweat poured from his forehead, mixing with the rain still dripping down his neck. The monitors flatlined. "Clear," he shouted, grabbing the defibrillator paddles. A nurse gelled the pads, and Malcolm pressed them to the boy's chest. Jason's body jolted once, then again. Beep. Beep. The line returned, thin, faint, but there. Malcolm exhaled, his shoulders slumping. He wasn't out of the woods, but he was alive. The room stilled. Every eye was on Malcolm, the man they nearly locked away. The man who'd just pulled life back from the edge. McCoy stood in the doorway, soaking, stunned. "You saved him," he said. Malcolm didn't look up. "I tried," he said quietly. "Now let's see if this city wants to save itself." And in the hallway, just beyond the trauma bay, Mayor Evelyn Drake arrived, rain on her shoulders, fear in her eyes, and vengeance blooming in her chest. Because justice wasn't coming quietly this time. It was crashing through the front doors with sirens blazing. The moment Jason's monitors began to stabilize, the storm outside found its way inside. Mayor Evelyn Drake stood frozen in the hallway, her eyes locked on her grandson's fragile body. A nurse whispered something to her, but the words didn't register. She saw Malcolm, drenched, shaking, blood on his gloves, and everything in her heart cracked. She crossed the threshold and stopped just short of Malcolm. "Is he?" she whispered. "He's alive," Malcolm said hoarsely, pulling off his gloves. "Barely. But he's fighting." Her lips trembled. For a long moment, she just stared at the boy, the only family she had left, then turned to Malcolm. Her gratitude was deep, but it was buried beneath something colder. Fury. She didn't ask who had stopped him. She already knew. "I want names," she said, her voice tight. "You'll get more than that," Malcolm replied. "You'll get proof." A quiet voice spoke from behind them. "That's going to be a problem." They turned. Chief Warren stood in the ER lobby flanked by 2 uniformed officers, a scowl carved deep into his face. He looked like a man walking into a fire, and still believing he'd come out clean. Malcolm stepped forward, shielding Jason from view. "You really want to do this here? You assaulted an officer, endangered lives, disobeyed commands." "I saved a child," Malcolm cut in. "Your mayor's grandson." Warren's jaw tensed. "You're a liability. You brought a media circus, and now you're threatening to bring this department down with lies." Evelyn stepped beside Malcolm. "They're not lies. And if you so much as touch him, I will make sure your badge is hanging on my office wall before sunset." Warren flinched, but the threat wasn't over. From the other side of the room, reporters began to gather. Someone had tipped them off. Microphones appeared. Cameras flashed. Phones were raised, red lights blinking to life. Malcolm saw them. And he knew, it was now or never. He walked forward and spoke loudly, clearly, to everyone in the room. "My name is Dr. Malcolm Rivers. I was pulled over by 2 officers while responding to a medical emergency. I was detained, ignored, humiliated, while a child lay dying." He pulled a flash drive from his pocket. "On this is a recording from Hospital Dispatch confirming my emergency status. I warned them. They refused to listen." A ripple spread through the crowd. "I'm not pressing charges today," Malcolm continued. "But I am pressing truth. If this is what happens to a surgeon with credentials and a hospital badge, Imagine what happens to someone without them. Warren turned red. McCoy, standing nearby, looked like he might be sick. Mayor Drake stepped to the mic. An internal investigation begins tonight. The public will be updated daily. No more secrets. No more silence. And then, Malcolm said the last thing that would echo through Savannah like a gunshot. Justice isn't a favor. It's a duty. And this city? It's about to find out what happens when duty is denied. Outside, the storm finally broke. Inside, a new one had just begun.